we need to pump these numbers up. These numbers are not high enough, but it does show that, well, there's a silver lining to the pandemic, if that's what you want to call it. Started in 2020. What happened was a lot of folks started to realize that the public education system was not what they thought it was. Okay? And folks started acting accordingly. But that's because it was exposed to you guys, whether you realize that a lot of these folks being pimped by these teachers unions don't have what's in the best interest of your child. And it's not what it's all cracked out to be. I know the indoctrination sort of worked. You look at public school as this positive thing. And I'd argue it's a net negative on society, but we'll talk about that in another video. But the silver lining is that people realized, okay, there's something fundamentally wrong, and they started to question whether or not they want their children to be around this damn shit. So, as covered right here, more than 1.2 million students have left public schools since the pandemic, according to this report. While students across the country welcome the coming of summer, mainly public schools face harsh reality that student enrollment has sharply declined and doesn't appear to be returning to pre-pandemic numbers. Some schools are even reaching a financial crisis point. According to the recent national survey tracking such numbers since 2020, public schools in the U.S. have lost more than 1.2 million students. That's not high enough. There are around 50 million students in the public school system across the country, so that's about a 2% drop. This is everywhere, but if anything, the trend is concentrated in major urban areas. For example, the Los Angeles Unified School District's non-charter schools saw 43,000 students leave over the past 2 academic years. The enrollment in college Chicago schools has dropped about 25,000 in that same time. Over the past 2 years, New York City has seen around 50,000 students leave the public school system. However, cities aren't the only places grappling with this. One district in Kansas, a suburb in Kansas City, Olathe, had more than 1,000 of its students leave in 2020 out of around 33,000. Perhaps even more interesting is that only around half of them returned to school. So you had 1,000 leave. Looks like 500 of them stayed out. Rural areas are seeing this trend. For example, Woodbury County in Iowa. Student enrollment in Westwood Community School District declined more than 5% during the last 2 years. It even dropped even though the superintendent, Jay Lutt, pointed out that the community saw an influx of new residents coming in from larger cities during the pandemic. So you had an influx of more people that were living there. However, that didn't correlate with more people being put in the schools, children. In Michigan, enrollment is still more than 50,000% lower than the numbers before the pandemic. This is also seen in areas like Orange County, California, which has historically been a destination for desirable public schools. Still, enrollment went down for the second year in a row across California. More than 250,000 students have gone off the state's public schools rolls since 2019. There's already somewhat of a trend before the pandemic, partly because of low birth rate, less immigration, but these declines in enrollment far exceed what can be explained by those factors. School closures and parents' frustrations with pandemic-related policies likely exacerbated it. That's, of course, exactly what happened. I can tell you that. And this is just in my experience talking with various other people, be it parents or whatever. And that the pandemic, when you have this system that you believe everybody believes that every teacher that exists has the best intentions in the world. They're all good people. And this system is where you drop them off at, even though you do it for your own personal reasons, you drop them off at this place and you think that they're doing good, or rather your kids are in good hands. They're not. And I can argue that from the curriculum perspective, but also you saw it. Okay. You saw when your kids were, depending on where you were at, were being forced to, stay home. So maybe you were there facilitating their learning, and you finally hear what's being taught. Or that environment you recognize for your child is not the best suited for them in terms of their learning experience. So you learn more about it. So what happened was people got more eyes on it. And I think this is why you had this sort of school choice movement, which doesn't go nearly far enough. You had this movement kind of come about, and that's because more folks had more eyes on it. So they see what's being done with the gender stuff. They see what's being done with the curriculum and what they're teaching these people. So they got pissed, and some acted accordingly. Some are screaming in school boards. Some have just taken their children out. Me personally, I think that, yeah, you should take them out. You can advocate that your money not be stolen from, be it in property taxes or whatever the shit that they take from you that's going to subsidize these schools. But if you want what's best for your child, yeah, you probably should get them the hell up out of there. It's a rotten animal that needs to be put down, period. Public education is rotten, and you have those who will always say, well, what about my poor? Right? They'll never be able to afford this, and that. And it's like, well, you cannot look at the education market through the lens of what exists right now. You say, oh, a private school costs too much and all this. Well, let's assume that the public education system was completely abolished. Well, the education system as it exists right now would not be what it would be on the other side, because you have not allowed the market to flourish at all. Even with some of the, even with like the rules that public schools, in order to exist freely, must do, or they can't exist freely, they have rules and regulations that they have to certainly abide by. I'm advocating, and others like myself are advocating to be completely eliminated, and you guys keep the money so you can decide what kind of learning choice, rather, is best suited for your child. Everybody wins in that situation, and there will still be inevitably schools that are free, not for profit, and all of that, and whatever. But let the market flourish. But this idea that these people should be like your little knothead children should be dropped off at some indoctrination camp where they're basically taught to hate you, to be fair. I say this all the time. It's like during the summer of love in 2020, and all these people are just acting fucking crazy. You had folks up and down, neon colored haired weirdo. If you don't think some of those guys come from conservative parenting or something like that, you're out of your fucking mind. I'm just giving you the facts. You cannot outdo the education system by like spending, 15 minutes with your child when y'all eat at lunch or something. Not even that. You eat at dinner and you say, how was your day? And they say, yeah, I went to school. And then they go play video games or some shit. If you think that you can, and you having that conversation is going to completely eliminate the indoctrination that's being done to your child, like 7, 8 hours, or however long it is, 5 days a week, you're cocky, but you're also stupid. The old saying goes, you cannot hand your children over to Caesar and not expect them to become Romans. Think about it. You just listened to a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake, which is live throughout the week at 12 p.m. Central on youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. Be sure to check out my website, ericdjuly.com, so you can stay up to date with everything it is that I'm doing. You can also become a member and get access to a bunch of cool perks and exclusive content, which includes a social media hub where you can interact with myself and other members. It even has an app that you can get, which is now live in the Google and Apple stores.